How you doing, guys? Ross here, and this is going to be a new thing called Beer Time with Ross. So pick up your beer and have a drink. Now today's topic is going to be about losing a pet or loss in the greater spectrum of things. And as you can probably tell from the title of this video, Apollo died. Now Apollo died 4 weeks ago tomorrow, which will be today for you all as you watch this. But for tonight, it's tomorrow for me. 4 weeks ago, Apollo died. Now, I have to start at the beginning because that's where all the stories start from. The previous day would have been a Monday, and Monday I was at CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, to do a checkup on my kid, my son, to be soon, to make sure that everything is still on track with all the issues that he has. If you don't know about his issues, click this up here to find out about that. Nonetheless, everything was the same, and we came home. Apollo was just fine that day. Very happy, loving dog, excited to see me when I came home. Got on the couch that night, laid next to me. I took pictures. I mean, he was snoring of all things. Went to bed, woke up early because I had to be at work. So 5:30 in the morning, I'm walking him. We take him to go do. I take him out to go do his business. He pisses, he poops, and I take him upstairs and I feed him, and then he watches me go out the door and off to work. And everything seemed okay. He seemed a little sluggish that morning, but I mean, 5:30, I think we're all sluggish at 5:30 in the morning. Nonetheless, when I got home, I unlocked the door and I tried to open it. I mean, usually it just kind of swishes open everything, but that time I unlocked it and I pushed and it just stopped. And I actually had to take my shoulder in the door because it had a substantial amount of weight behind it. The weight behind it was Apollo. And when I pushed open the door, I looked to my right, and there he is laying down on the ground. And sometimes he's done this before, a couple times in the past couple of years. Maybe he's just lazy or tired. He didn't want to get out of the way. And so I took my foot and I tapped him. And then nothing happened. He didn't move. Things started clicking in my brain about what was going on. It still wasn't comprehended, but my brain was trying to wrap around everything that was happening, all these details. I got down, my brain realizing that his chest isn't moving. And I got down and I put my hand on his chest, and his chest was stiff. Rigor mortis, which I believe I'm pronouncing right, but it might not be, has already set in, so he means he's been dead for a couple hours now. I don't feel a heartbeat. I don't feel his lungs rise and fall. And all this is clicking now, and I know it, and I know in my head what the fuck this means. And then I look at his eyes, and his eyes aren't blinking, they're not moving, and they're glassed over. Fuck! I just stood up and I walked away. And I said, fuck, fuck, fuck. And I looked at him, and I looked back, and I started walking around, just very animated and very upset and very angry, not knowing what to do. What do you do when you come home and you have a dead dog? When you live in a massive suburb, I mean, I don't live in the country, so it's not like I can just take him, you know, back in the backyard of my yard, because I live 3 stories up in the sky. I called a friend, he didn't answer, and then I texted him, I told him what happened. He called me. He said, hey, call the vet. The vet didn't offer to do an autopsy at all, but they said you can either cremate him, which would cost money, and my salary doesn't really give me that much. I live pretty well, but I'm not going to spend $400, $300 to cremate a dog. The second option was to bury him, and that's what I decided to do, was bury him. Now, that was pretty hard and rough. I had to come back inside and stare at him, and I sat there for a while not knowing how to do it and everything, and I didn't want to touch him, I didn't want to move him. I was nervous, I guess fearful would be a good word. But what I eventually had to do is I got the comforter that he used to lay on, and I had to pick him up, and he's a 65-70 pound dog, and rigor mortis set in, so I had to, like, you know, do a squat and try to pick him up and get underneath him. At the same time, I really didn't want to touch him because he's dead, and not that I was scared because he's dead or anything, like, you know, but it just, the emotion behind it, I didn't want to touch my dead dog. I didn't want to realize, I didn't want to recognize, I didn't want to admit that he was dead. And I had to lift him up and put him onto the comforter, and then I had to take the comforter and wrap him around it, And then I had to do one of the most awkward things I've had to do in my life, and I had to walk down 3 flights of stairs with a dead dog and wrapped in a blanket and his tail hanging out. And when I got down to my car, there's a young couple, a man and a woman, walking by, and I saw the girl's eyes look at the tail that was hanging out, and watching her process that information, watching that click in her mind where she knows what was happening. So I got Apollo into the car and I drove him to my parents' house, and luckily my uncle showed up to help me, because I googled it about how far deep that you need to dig a grave so to make sure that animals don't get at it, because God forbid I didn't want to bury my dog and then have my mom or my sister wake up the next morning and see freaking the grave dug up and a half-eaten dog laid across the yard. Talk about the imagery there. Just imagine that your sister, your mother, seeing the dog that they used to love and they petted and it came to Christmas and everything and all that, and now you see the dead dog's, God, horrible image. And this is the shit that my brain goes through. Yeah, so I looked it up and it's 3 to 4 feet. If you ever want to know, 3 to 4 feet. Thankfully he showed up, and he showed up with a big metal bar to kind of break up the soil, because in the northeast where I live in the United States, the soil is like, it's not soil, it's clay. It's red clay, and it is impossible to dig through. I'm very glad that he showed up though, because after an hour of digging, and I had blisters all over my hands. My hands were entirely fucked. They were literally bleeding on my right hand because I was so angry. I didn't even give 2 fucks about the pain. I was just shoving, but just slamming the shovel into the ground over and over again. If I was scraping a ½ inch of dirt, or if I was getting 4 inches of dirt, it didn't matter to me. I wasn't caring about form. I wasn't caring about pain, efficiency. I wasn't caring about any of that. I was just 100% pissed the fuck off that I just lost my dog. The reason I was so pissed off though is because it was the one thing I was counting on. Out of all the things that I was about to deal with my kid in the next 2 weeks, Apollo was the one thing that was an absolute, one thing that wouldn't change. Yes, my family, my mother, my stepdad, my 2 sisters, they wouldn't change, my family wouldn't change, but he was the one thing in my day-to-day life that absolutely wouldn't change. He wasn't going anywhere. He was always gonna care about me. He was always gonna love me. And also, the one great thing about dogs is they're always fucking excited when you come home. They could be pissed off at you the night before, but the next morning when you come home from work and stuff, they're freaking absolutely excited to see you. I guess one of the larger reasons why I was so upset is that I haven't had to deal with a lot of loss in my adult life recently. I had to deal with loss when I was younger. I lost my father age 10. I lost all my grandparents. And the only kind of pet I've had to deal with, other than fish, was I lost a horse. I used to be a horseback rider when I was younger. But my horse died after my father died. So I didn't really get to see the horse anymore, actually at all. So once my father died in August of '94, I didn't see my horse at all. And when it died, there was really no emotional connection because I never got to see the horse afterwards anyway, and I didn't get to see the dead horse either as well. Coming home to see your dead dog though is an entirely different thing. And during this entire thing, there was no signs. When I came home, there was nothing wrong with the house. There was no, diarrhea. There was no puke. There was nothing that it was eaten. There was nothing that the dog got into. He didn't get into the trash. He didn't get any chemicals. There was nothing visually wrong in the entire scenario. And there was nothing wrong prior either. There was no signs of any kind of disease or anything at all. It was an entire shock. Dug the hole with my uncle. I had to dig the grave. It was supposed to be 4 feet deep. We didn't get 4 feet. We got 3 feet and a couple inches because clay is motherfucking hard to dig through. Hands all bloody, freaking blisters, pretty hard shit. Then I had to do probably one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do in my adult life, which was bury my dog. I mean, digging the grave is one thing, but taking the body and picking him up and putting him in the grave, that was emotionally wrecking. It shook me to my core, absolutely. When I lowered him in there, I got into the grave with him, I positioned him in there, and then I took a good 5 to 10 minutes and cried, talking to him. Fully emotionally wrecked, devastated, and mourning and grieving for Apollo. It was some hard shit to deal with. And I guess you would say why it was so hard is because I didn't know what the fuck happened. Like I said, there was no signs of it. There was no signs of anything wrong. A lot of my friends think that there was something sudden, a heart attack, a stroke, a aneurysm, as so many other things that could have been, but there was no signs of anything, so it was hard to wrap my mind around, and still is, about what happened. And so in those 5 to 10 minutes talking to Apollo, I kept on asking for his forgiveness and saying sorry, because I felt like I failed him. Now, another reason why it took me 4 weeks to make this video, I guess you might be wondering, is because it actually has been so hard. It's been pretty hard to just grasp my mind around that my dog is gone. Something that's been a presence of your life for so long, when you expect it to be there and it's then gone, it's hard to just deal with emotionally sometimes. And I guess it's hard to explain. You know, the one thing is about your brain. Let me zoom in here. Let's talk about like brain power here and everything. Your brain is an amazing piece of machinery, and it is machinery. It's biomechanical in the sense of that it's transferring information by biological signals. It's electric, it is chemical, but it is very much a mechanical process in the sense of just firing off different places. The brain is a complex thing in itself, and how it stores information, how it processes information, and then also all the subconscious things it does on a minute by minute, second by second thing is very like impressive, just generically. But then trying to have your brain cope with something, because that is it's a process. You know, I had to deal with my father dying, and it's something that I had to deal with and still do, what, 22 years after the fact? It's something that I still don't have a full handle on. I got a handle on it like 99.99% of the time, but then when you lose a parent at age 10, and then you're 32 and you're about to have a kid, and you say in your mind, where the fuck's my dad at? Well, it just kind of comes back. Like, okay, well, why can't I have my dad? Not to have a sob story or anything, but comprehending and fully understanding why I lost Apollo, it's a process. And I guess what this beer time is really about is about talking. Because talking is the process of how you will get through everything in life. If you don't fucking talk to anybody, if you sit at home and just fucking sit in your own brain and think and think and think, it can be pretty emotionally devastating for yourself. It can lead to tracks and down course and roads that you might not want to travel down. And if anyone has been on the track of depression, that has dealt with other things, suicidal ideations, drug use, addiction, alcoholism, all these other different things, they all stem from usually one generic issue: coping issue. The inability, or inability, I guess you would say, the inability to cope. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist. This is just a rambling of an old man, and I'm not even that old. Nonetheless, that's my opinion. My opinion is that usually all these issues stem from one problem, and that is a coping issue. And coping, you have to do in multiple different fashions, in my opinion. You have to do it internally. You have to think about it and think about what you're having issues with, and then you have to talk about it. And so I was lucky enough that one of my friends had an old man's bachelor party, and we went out to the middle of the woods and we cut down some trees and we built a bonfire. We drank. It had nothing to do with my dog dying, but that one evening, me and him sat by the fire when everyone else went to sleep and everyone else was gone, and we sat by that fire in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, and we talked about Apollo dying and how it hurt me, and you know, why I was hurt so much, and the loss that it was to me. So I urge all of you to, if you can't talk to somebody freaking close by, to, well, just find somebody, to be honest. And I know not everybody has somebody, but more than likely you really do. and it might just be hard to reach out and talk to somebody, but just reach out and talk to somebody, because I swear to you, once you talk about things get better. And it's everything, even with the things that are happening with my kid. You know, talking about it, it makes it more real, but also makes my ability to comprehend what's going on and my ability to cope with it and prepare for it all that much better. I hope you guys enjoyed beer time. As always though, I'm the Flying Ross. Cheers. Until next time.